Today, inshallah, we continue with the hadith lessons as we continue with the teachings and the narrations and the stories told to us by Abdullah ibn Mubarak. And today, inshallah, we will be talking specifically about a quote narrated from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It is narrated by Shu'bah, narrated from Zubayd, narrated from Murrah, that Imam Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, what is the meaning of ittaqullah ḥaqqa tuqātih? In Surah Al-Imran, verse number 102, it translates to fear Allah as He should be truly feared. But the teaching that Ibn Mas'ud is telling us here, that how should Allah be feared as He asked us? The way He taught us that how Allah should be feared is that to obey Him so that you never show disobedience to Allah Azza wa Jal, and to always thank Allah Azza wa Jal for His blessings and to never forget them, and to always remember Allah in your mind, and to always worship Allah so that you never forget Him. That is what Abdullah ibn Mas'ud taught us about the meaning of وَاتَّقُوا ḥaqqa tuqātih. Worship Allah and fear Allah as He should be feared. Muslim scholars have argued whether this ayah is copied from somewhere else, and Allah removed the ayah that this is copied from. Muslim scholars argue whether this ayah originally existed or Allah copied it from somewhere else. The meaning of a copied ayah in Islam, it is basically that an ayah existed in a certain surah, and Allah copied it, made a new ayah out of it, and either removed the ruling or removed the obligation that it had, or removed the text itself, or removed both, or let both remain. And what scholars argue on this is, for example, to just explain what I just said. When Allah removes a ruling from an ayah or an obligation from an ayah, but the text itself remains, means that you read the ayah in the Quran as it is, but we're not obligated to do whatever is in the ayah. And if the opposite happens, Allah removes the text, but the obligation still remains, is that when you read the Quran, you will never find this ayah, but its obligation and its rule still remains in Islam. And that's what Muslim scholars argue about this ayah. Fear Allah as He should be truly feared. They're arguing whether this ayah existed somewhere else and Allah copied it into this, and it is what we read today, or it just existed as it is and it's never copied. Despite there being an argument between Muslim scholars about whether this ayah was copied from somewhere else, whether its ruling has been removed or the text has been removed. But the tafsir scholars, the scholars that basically define and explain the text of the Quran, go to somewhere else that this ayah has been copied. Reason why there is another ayah that said, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Try to fear Allah as much as you can. Their argument is this, that we obviously would never fear Allah Azza wa Jal as much as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. So no matter how much we try, we would never fear Allah as He should be feared. But what we can do is that we can do what the other ayah says. We can fear Allah as much as we can, because we can never truly fear Him as much as He needs to be feared. Majority of the companions and the Sahaba and the Salaf have went to the teachings of Ibn Mas'ud to define this ayah. And what it is that we obey Allah so that we never disobey Him. We always thank Allah for His blessings and never defy His blessings and never reject them. And that we always remember Allah so that we never forget Him. Most of the Salaf and the companions have went to that. Went to the point that as much if you tell one of the companions that the Day of Judgment is tomorrow, you're gonna die tomorrow, something really bad is gonna happen to you tomorrow, it's not gonna change anything of his actions, because he is fearing Allah as much as he can. He cannot do anything more than that. One of our brothers mentioned in ayah, it is فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. Follow the straight path as the way you were commanded. And the way that these two ayahs should be taken is that we should still follow what Allah has given us and still follow it as straight as we were commanded, because if we go on the subjective way that we think about it, is that what is going to happen is that some of us are going to worship to extreme points and say that's I'm worshiping Allah as much as I can, I'm fearing Allah as much as I can, or they're going to do just anything, barely anything to scrape by and say that's the maximum that I can do. We should follow it as it was commanded to us, because if we leave it to opinion, if we leave it to something that is subjective as human mind, we would do either the bare minimum or we would go to the extreme. Take an example of how we should worship Allah as a straight path that we recommended. There is no better example than to use a story that, from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's life. By the mother of all believers, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that after Aisha, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to pray qiyam. To us, qiyam is optional. You can do it if you want, but you don't have to do it. But for Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, it's an obligation. He was commanded to do so in the Quran, to pray qiyam every day after Isha. And she said he used to always pray Isha, he used to always pray qiyam right after Isha until Fajr has came. So he would he would finish praying Isha, then he would go to qiyam and pray 11 rak'ahs until Fajr and then would call. And one time she said that in the middle of the night, one time she woke up and she didn't feel him next to her. She felt like he went missing. And she thought maybe he went to one of his other wives. She felt jealous for a bit. But when she kept looking for him at night, it was so dark, so she had to touch around her to see whether he's near her or anything. And she found him. He was doing sujood on the ground and he was crying, worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. And he was praying qiyam at the time. And another story by one of his companions, radiallahu anhu, named Abdullah ibn Shakhir. He used to say he was... by this companion, and what this companion narrated about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that whenever you heard him pray, you would hear that his rib cage is wheezing. You would hear that his rib cage and ribs are shaking and falling. That is from how much he was crying while he was praying.